them. Joining us now is Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, member of the Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committee. Senator, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us. What's the latest on the timeline for the sanctions package that might come out of the Senate?
Well, we had a very important and positive meeting last night. Chairman Menendez of the Foreign Relations Committee, Ranking Member Risch, as well as Senator Schumer and McConnell, a large group of us met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz following his meeting with President Biden. I think the timeline for us to come to final agreement on a sanctions package against Russia to further deter Russia has gotten closer and shorter. I'm hopeful it'll be introduced before we leave at the end of this week. I am optimistic that we now have clarity. I think the meeting between President Biden and Chancellor Scholz yesterday went very well and produced a clearer and more close alignment between the United States and Germany, in many ways the most significant nation in NATO and the EU, given its closeness to Russia, given its size and the significance of its economy, and given the number of American troops and other military resources that are based in Germany.
Can I ask you about the specific sanctions that you want to see passed? Because the New York Times, quoting the New York Times to sum up President Biden's speech yesterday, it said in part, Mr. Biden, who has refrained from publicly criticizing German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, said that the Germans supported a strong package of sanctions, but did not detail what those would be. In recent weeks, Mr. Biden has threatened severe economic sanctions against Russia's financial sector, members of President Vladimir Putin's inner circle, and perhaps some have said it should target Putin himself. What kind of sanctions do you think would be appropriate, and who should they target specifically?
Well, first, I think it's important that President Biden made it perfectly clear. If there is further aggression by Russia into Ukraine, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which has been constructed at huge cost over many years and is a prize of real significance to Putin, that pipeline will be stopped. Second, I think it's clear that we have agreement around sanctions that would deny access to technological products. Russia doesn't manufacture advanced semiconductor chips, for example, and we would find ways to block their access towards the kinds of supplies and components and materials essential for a 21st century economy. I do think that personally targeted sanctions that focus on Putin's inner circle, the oligarchs and kleptocrats who sustain him in office, and more transparency about Putin's corruption and the ways in which the investments and the choices he's making are depriving the average Russian of the opportunity for a good life and for prosperity. All of that should have a deterrent effect on Vladimir Putin.
There is a lot of analysis out there that Vladimir Putin is in the stronger position diplomatically, certainly with the way this has played out. In previous weeks, Putin has suggested on a number of times that Macron was the one he wanted to talk to, and yet what we saw in the past 24 hours is very different. What do you make of Russia changing gears and then, by some experts' analysis, using Macron seemingly to suggest that the U.S. is the only one who can really make this deal and that France is not the leader of Europe or the leader of NATO?
Well, look, Putin, as a former KGB colonel, is a master of disinformation. He has amassed along the borders of Ukraine nearly 130,000 troops, the majority of his ground combat capability as a country. He's moved troops all the way from the border with China in eastern Siberia to the border with Ukraine. And his putting forward France first as a potential negotiating partner and then thrusting them aside whimsically at the next moment, I think is just another move by Putin to keep all of us off balance. That's why I think it's important that President Biden has taken back the initiative by sending $200 million in lethal aid to Ukraine over recent weeks, by getting our closest allies to send material and financial support into Ukraine. Germany's provided $2 billion of support to the Ukrainian economy. The Poles, the Czechs, our Baltic allies, the French have sent additional troops and additional materiel to the eastern flank of NATO and into Ukraine. All of that is because President Biden has masterfully pulled together the NATO alliance and our EU partners in a common voice. Back to the question about what sanctions I most want to see. I want to see united sanctions so that the 27 member states of the EU, within a matter of days or even hopefully hours after any additional aggression by Russia, can say, these are the sanctions we all support. After the invasion of Crimea, the occupation and annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014, it took months for our allied partners in Europe and the United States to come to some common consensus about what sort of sanctions to impose. We should do this proactively. That's why the Senate needs to act now to follow President Biden's strong leadership.
All right, live from Capitol Hill, Senator Chris Coons, always a pleasure. Thank you for spending some time with us, sir.
Thank you.